It's come time to replace the brake booster on the 240. It's fairly low miles, but I believe just all the heat from this turbo finally got to the booster. I'm pretty sure that played a part. You can see how close everything is to this. I wrapped it as best I could, but it's old stuff. I've been through a couple turbo blankets. When we redo the turbo system, I'm going to put all the modern material for heat disbursement and blocking and whatnot. I might try to either make or see if one of the shields might work, but this is just really close to the turbine housing, so we'll see what I can come up with. I'm hoping the new booster will move the cylinder back a little bit. We'll find out. This is the first time I've had to do this with a turbo like this. Typically we have to unbolt the master from the booster, and you can usually pull the master out without disconnecting the lines. Pull it far enough away from the booster to get the booster out. The booster has 4 bolts on the back side of it that you have to remove where the brake pedal is and whatnot. But it's kind of a tight fit with this top mount setup, so should be interesting. The new booster I got is from a B13 Sentra. I could not find a replacement for the 240. It's impossible to find right now. Nobody makes a reman or anything. So if anybody knows a place that rebuilds these, it's pretty quality. I'd like to keep this one and have it rebuilt and keep it around for later, just because they're getting hard to find, and you can see it's in a really good condition. I mean, this car has 0 rust. All the used ones I found that would match this dual diaphragm like this are rusted out in really bad shape, so I don't want to put bad parts on the car. Here's the replacement booster. It's not a rebuild, it's a new unit I got from Rock Auto. Like I said, it's from a B13. You see you got the 4 bolts that bolt through the firewall. I believe I'm going to have to change this to match the 240, but I guess we'll find out soon enough. The only other difference is the vacuum port is right here on the B13, whereas on the 240 it's right here. So this is similar to like a Z32. Z32 would also fit, and it's also a dual diaphragm. I wanted to keep the dual diaphragm just because the extra help there. We do have the Z32 brakes on there. It's not too bad to pull the master off. You got 2 12mm bolts, one right there, one right there. This is just a bracket that's held on by the bolts. This held the vacuum hose over here. It's got a clip for these brake lines there. This just kind of pulls off. As you see, the master cylinder does just kind of pull out. Whether or not I have enough space here to pull this out and then also pull the booster out, time will tell. Plus we got to worry about these brake lines here to pull this out. So I'm going to try to avoid opening the brake system, but I'm got to bleed the brakes anyway just to get some old fluid out and put some fresh fluid in. So we'll see. This is probably the hardest part of the job just because it's so tight. You need to get underneath the dash. You got 4 bolts right there, 2 on each side. The hard part is getting this little pin out there. You got to pull that cotter pin out, push the pin out of the rod on the other side, and that will disengage the brake booster from the brake pedal. But once you have that, then you can push the booster away from the firewall and yank it out. For these pins, I typically take one of my dental hooks like this and just reach up there and hook it, pull it out. That's the easy part. The hard part is trying to fit my fat little fingers up there and push it back in after you install everything. But pulling it out's not too bad. This is what the pin looks like after you get it out. This one's old. They usually have like a little plastic tip on these, but I've had this one out a couple times just during the swap, replacing different things. But that's the pin you want to remove, and the cotter pin that actually holds that pin in. Once those are removed, you can see the brake pedal is now no longer attached to your booster. Alright, so I was able to pull this master, I believe, far enough. You can kind of see I did have to unplug. There is a sensor right here. That's your brake light comes on when your brake fluid gets low. Unplug that because the harness is getting tight. The lines do bend pretty easily. They'll go back to where they were fairly easily as well. So I believe I can pull this far enough out away from the firewall to get the booster out all the way. You can see with the bolts loose from underneath the board, it just kind of pulls out. I don't know if you can see down there. Just got to pull it far enough away for the studs to come through the firewall, and you should be able to lift it out. And this line should pull out of the way, and I should have enough space in between here to do that. It's kind of hard to hold the camera and do with one hand, so I'm going to put this down and yank it out. So I just pulled the booster out. It really wasn't too bad. The trick was just to lift straight up. It wasn't like pull straight out and lift out. You actually tilted the bottom, lifted the front of it, and then it just kind of rotated out and lifted out. You just had to move this line out of the way. But yeah, that wasn't too bad. I'm going to clean up the firewall, compare the two boosters. Pulling it out, it actually looks identical to the S14 one, other than the vacuum port, but we'll see. Manifold still looks to be in great condition. It's 20 years old. I said it's hopefully going to update to something else, a newer modern turbo down the road. But so I got the S14 booster out, and it actually looks like they're pretty much identical, depth, width, everything. So we're not going to make it any smaller, unfortunately, but this is the gasket that goes in between the firewall and the booster. Still in really good shape. Just going to reuse that. But yeah, this, I mean, I'm guessing the B13 uses the same thing as Z32, because the Z32 has a twin diaphragm just like the automatic S14. So, and they look to be, like I said, they're pretty much identical, other than the vacuum port. The only thing I'm going to have to change is the rod here, which is expected. And if you didn't know, these are adjustable. This is a lock nut, so when you do replace these, you want to make sure to check your free play with the pedal, because if you tighten it to where there is no free play in the pedal, you're going to slowly put on the brakes, and it'll force you to stop until you actually unlock this and adjust it and give it a little bit of free play. So you want like a good 1/8 of an inch of free play of the rod before it actually engages the booster when you set these up. But yep, there it is, a factory one out. Hopefully I can get this rebuilt somewhere. Let's get the other one in. New booster is in. Went in fairly easy, just like the other one came out. Just had to tip the front side and swing it right in. I mean, it was a little bit tight. It touches the tower here. I think it would be really easy if I didn't have a top mount, because it was touching the shock tower, and it was also touching the downpipe on that side. So if you didn't have a top mount with the downpipe right there, I think this would just swing right out. But it was a little bit tight, a little bit of jiggling, but overall, really not that hard. Before you go bolting everything back together, you want to make sure the yoke of the rod actually went over your pedal assembly, because if it's turned sideways, it'll actually push out the pedal. You'll be fighting it to get in. But you want to make sure that when you're installing the booster, the yoke is pointing up and down. That way it'll slide right over the pedal like this. And then you can reinstall your pin accordingly, and then start bolting everything back together. Just put everything back together. Super easy to do. What I would say, as far as this pin goes, everything's going to be pretty much by feel. So get your camera phone like this, or a mirror or something. Find out where the hole is on that little pin. Unless you got like a tiny head and tiny body, you're probably not going to be able to squeeze underneath all these pedals. Everything's just going to be by feel. So put the pin in there, look to see where that hole would be, and then that way you can kind of feel around and put the clip in. It actually went together pretty easily. Now, as far as the pedal adjustment goes, like I was mentioning, you want to make sure you have a good 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch of free travel right here before you feel any resistance from the booster. Like right there, that's stop, and then I can push in more. But you want this little bit of play here. You don't want constant pressure on the booster. Everything bolted back together real quick and easy. The only thing left to do is to reroute the vacuum hose. You can see on the factory S14 it comes over here to the right. I need to plumb it over there, which looks like it's going to be fairly easy. You want to make sure to keep this one-way check valve in there. That allows you to pull vacuum into the booster and doesn't allow any positive pressure in there, so that's pretty important to keep in there. So what I did was I pulled the valve off of this hose here. I put that elbow on the vacuum port on the booster, and I want to see how much I would need to cut off here, but I really don't want to cut this hose. I don't know how long, or I don't know if these are still available through Nissan. It's in really good shape. It's still real soft. Even being close to this turbo, it's in really good shape. In case I ever want to go back to the factory booster, I do want to have that one rebuilt. I dug through my pile of parts and I found a piece of silicone hose that I use for different things. It's a real good quality, thick, won't collapse under vacuum. It's good for oil. So I'm going to measure what I need to cut and just put a little piece of silicone here rather than cut the nice factory piece, because I may need this in the future. And here's the finished product. Looks pretty good in there. Like I said, it's the exact same size as the S14 one that I replaced. You see, I chose not to put this bracket on because the top portions were to mainly hold the vacuum hose that came over here. No need for that. I couldn't remove that from the bracket. It's welded on. The only other thing on there that's of use is this for the brake lines, which you can see just old and crunchy. It's not going to hold them very well anyway, and these are pretty solid anyway, so they're not going to rub on anything. If you look down there, clear of everything. But yeah, that really wasn't that bad to do. It's been a while since I've done one, and usually when I'm doing them, it's usually during swaps when there's no engine in the engine bay. But even with this, it really wasn't bad to do. Hope this helps.